came not to call the righteous, but sinners to repentance. And the disciples of John and the Pharisees used to fast. And they came and said to him, why do the disciples of John and of the Pharisees fast, but thy disciples fast not? And Jesus said unto them, can the children of the bride chamber fast, while the bridegroom is with them? As long as they have the bridegroom with them, they cannot fast. But the days will come when the bridegroom shall be taken away from them, and then shall they fast in those days.
Okay, stop there for a second. Once again, Jesus is a messianic prophet, Messiah. That he has a great divine purpose that is not understood by the people around him. They don't understand who he is. Okay? They don't understand why is it that you don't fast. John the Baptist fasts, everybody else is fasting, but you're not. And Jesus is revealing because you don't quite understand who I am. That this is not the time to fast. Just like it's not the time to reveal who I am. It's not the time for people to know who I am. That time will come. It won't be fully understood until he's crucified. That in the meantime, everything that Jesus does up until crucifixion is not understood and cannot be understood. The only way you can understand Christ is through the mystery of the cross. And if you try to understand Christ today without seeing him through crucifixion, then you still got a skewed vision of who he was. So Jesus is saying, you know, there's no need to fast right now because you don't even know who I am. But when the time comes of my crucifixion and my death, you know, and the gospel now has to be preached and sent, that's the time to fast. There'll come a time in the future to fast, but right now Jesus is like, it's not the time. They didn't understand it. They didn't understand it. I mean, people today wouldn't even understand it. You know what I'm saying? Even when you look back at it, it's like, well, Jesus didn't want to fast because it wasn't his time. Like, what that mean? You know what I'm saying? You know, so fasting was not a part of the ingredient to bring about salvation. It was sacrifice of your life. You know, so people, this is another example of how people did not understand who Jesus was. And he tried to explain it, even his explanation they didn't get. Okay? Where were we at? Verse 21? Okay, can you read some more for me?
No man also seweth a piece of new cloth on an old garment, else the new piece that filleth up taketh away from the old, and the rent is made worse. And no man putteth new wine into an old bottle, else the new wine bursts the bottles, and the wine is spilled, and the bottles will be marred. But new wine must be put into new bottles. And it came to pass that he went through the cornfields on the Sabbath day, and the disciples began as they went to pluck the ears of corn. And the Pharisees said unto him, behold, why do they on the Sabbath day that which is not lawful? Why do they do that on the Sabbath day which is not lawful? And he said unto them, have you never read what David did when he had need and wasn't hungered, he and they that were with him? How he went into the house of God in the days of Abiathar, the high priest, and did eat the shewbread, which is not lawful to eat, but for the priests, and gave also to them which were with him.
Okay, stop there. Okay, so we have a lot of things going on here. First, Jesus doesn't seem to be necessarily following the messianic message of much of the Old Testament ideas of what's to be followed according to the legalistic aspect of Judaism, that he seems to somewhat disregard. Disregard some of the legalistic rules of the Old Testament, of the Leviticus laws. You know, that you're not supposed to work on the Sabbath. That Jesus clearly violates that. And that seems to pose a problem, not for the peasants, not for the winos, not for the drunkards. Okay? They didn't care. It posed a problem for the people who were in power, the Pharisees and Sadducees, because he was not following the strict code of expectation that one would have of a Messiah. Not understanding that Jesus was not that kind of a Messiah. He was not a political Messiah. He was not even a synagogue-type religious Messiah. He was a suffering sacrifice that should be given through crucifixion. So he didn't necessarily follow the rules, okay? And he clearly violated the law. Clearly.
Of the Pharisees.
Well, of the Leviticus laws of the Bible.
Okay.
Clearly violated. I mean, there's no way getting around it. Jesus, he plucked corn and ate on Saturday. And they basically asked him why. And he said, well, David, he went to the house of Abathar, which is actually a mistake. It's a written mistake in the gospel.
Why do you think why do you really do it?
He was hungry.
Yeah, maybe it was, yeah.
Well, I mean,
No, I'm just saying, yeah. I see what you're talking about.
yeah. I mean, I think we'll get to why. He explains why. He explains why, which requires a deeper understanding, not a legalistic understanding. Because a legalistic understanding means there's a set of laws that's set here and you follow. Okay? And we have a lot of Christians who are like that. All they know how to do is follow laws. There are some churches. I'm not, all of them got Baptists, Methodists, Pentecostals, whatever they got leaders who all people know how to do is follow laws. To them, we ain't in church unless you give me a set of rules to follow. And if you ain't telling those rules are, then you ain't preaching. There are some people who only know how to follow rules and not how to discern the will and purpose of God around those rules. People are not able to process sometimes, like, God, what are you saying in this circumstance? Well, that's too much for me. Just tell me what to do. Tell me what to do, what I can't do, and I'm good. Okay? Jesus does not follow laws based on regulation and rules. He follows the will of God, which may sometimes contradict some of those laws that they felt were so important. And look what he says. He actually addresses it. And now there's a whole other issue here about Abathar. It actually wasn't Abathar who was in the temple. It was a Hammon. It's a written error, in New Testament. Now, that's not to say the gospel's wrong, but it just says that when they wrote it, they wrote the wrong name. Okay?
And elaborate on what you were saying too, Red. Sometimes people can follow rules and still be messed up in the heart and spirit.
Right. Following rules, it just means I know how to follow rules, but it don't mean I'm doing the right thing. Yeah. If somebody, if you're sick, right, and somebody is taking care of you, and they got rules, okay, if he upset, give him this medicine, take him. They got a set of rules. But when people love you, and they're not necessarily following rules, they may see, okay, he's not feeling good. What he needs is somebody to come sit down and talk to him. This ain't the time for medicine. This is the time to talk to him and find out what's going on. This is the time for him or her to have a shoulder to lean on and cry. You see what I'm saying? So having to discern what's best is the best route to understanding God or getting close to God. And that's what Jesus demonstrates here. Let me show you. Because Jesus basically, he fixed them scripturally. Okay, you want to throw the Bible at me, I'll throw the Bible back at you. David did it. He's supposed to be your king. But then he turns around and says this.
We're 28, right?
28, yeah.
Okay.
Wait a minute. Was it 28?
We're 27. 27.
Okay. And he said unto them, the Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. What does that mean?
The Sabbath was made for man, and not man for the Sabbath. Therefore, the Son of Man is also Lord of the Sabbath. What does that mean? Okay. It's like this. It's like this. If I make a rule, let me see. If I make a rule and say,
Well, to me, it kind of sounds like Jesus was kind of like, how can I put it in a good way? He was kind of exercising his authority over me.
Well, yeah, in a way, but
he said it right here, therefore the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath.
this is true.
So I'm telling you, like, I'm the Lord of this, like, so who are y'all to question me about what I do on the Sabbath anyway?
Well, in a way, yeah, that's right in a way, but I think also that Christ was demonstrating that the superiority of individual choice that's based upon your connection to Christ, that is far superior than any rule or regulation. Let me give an example. Let's just say we're having dinner, right? And I got a rule that say, you tell your children, everybody in your house, when you eat your chicken, you got a knife, you cut it with the fork, and you eat it. Okay? And that's the way we're going to do that. Okay? And so that works. Your family's eating dinner, blase, we eat with our forks, and that's what we do.
Yeah.
But guess what? One day you're hungry, and you got some chicken at the house, and the fork is all the way, you don't have any forks, you ran out. Can I pick it up with my hands and eat it?
Yeah, you chicken by hand.
Do I circumvent that law and I eat it? Yes, because the food was designed for you to enjoy and not for you to enjoy the rules. So when Jesus said the Sabbath was made for man, it's made for you. You are the Lord of the Sabbath. You determine what you can and cannot do. Don't let the Sabbath define for you what you can do and can't do. So in other words, this is designed for you to exercise your religious faith and your understanding of who Christ is, and you become the Lord of what you can and cannot do on the Sabbath, and don't let the Sabbath be the Lord of you. Don't let the rules be your God. But you are the God of the rules, based on your relationship with Christ. Okay? So in other words, I'm not bound to following the Sabbath rules, because it's almost like if somebody had a big list of rules of what I can do on the Sabbath and what I can't do, okay? Then that means that Sabbath day rule is over me. And God didn't design it that way. He designed it to be my day of rest. And my day of rest might look different than your day of rest. My day of rest might look totally different than somebody else, and I'm in charge of that, not the rules. So I don't have to follow the rules, I have to follow the rule of God in my life. Now God may tell me to follow all those rules. But I have that choice because of God's relationship in my life. So in other words, I'm not going to be a slave to the Sabbath day. Because the Sabbath day wasn't designed for me to be a slave to. It was designed to benefit me. Just like the fork. The knife and the fork is designed to benefit me. But if it don't work for me one day and I want to eat with my hand, then then it's okay to do that.
It's like you have a choice. Like you have a choice.
You have a choice. You have a choice of what works for you. It's a day of rest, but you're not supposed to be a slave to the day of rest. Okay? That you are the Lord of that. And that's when Jesus turns around and says, not only are you the Lord of it, he didn't say it, but technically he's saying you're the Lord of it, but he's also the Lord of me. I will decide what is good and what's not.
I understand the conflict of interest though, because it's like the Old Testament teach you this, that, and the third, and then here comes Jesus, and he's trying to tell you, well, it's not that, but this is how it should be done.
Right, it's discernment. The difference is discernment. Jesus wants you to use your ability to reason and have a relationship with God to make choices and not necessarily follow rules. Because if you're just following rules, then you're not necessarily following it based upon love.
You're a slave to the one who made the rules.
There you go. You're a slave to the one who made the laws. And you're not free to demonstrate true love based out of your heart.
Can we backtrack then?
Yeah.
In the Old Testament, who made these laws about the Sabbath? Was it Moses and his relationship to God? I mean,
a lot of laws were made
or the
because
Pharisees or I guess you call the Jews.
a lot of the Jews, the people, the clergy, the people of Leviticus, the liturgical people, they made a lot of rules based upon their needs in the wilderness.
Okay.
Well, what about the scriptures they say is how the Spirit of the Lord came to XYZ in the Old Testament and gave them certain rules to abide by.
That too.
True.
And it was saying how you're supposed to just rest on the Sabbath day and don't do nothing.
Well, remember this, that the rules that were given by, what was the key word you just said?
The Spirit of God.
The Spirit of God. And the Spirit of God is not a one-time event. God does not come one day and say, this is what we don't do, and that's forever the rule. You know, if we in tune with God, the same Spirit that spoke to them speaks to you. And what may have not been necessary then may be necessary now. You know, if we're living in the wilderness and we got to have everybody in lock tune step with what we're doing because of the dangers of it, that's a little different. It's kind of like, you know, I don't believe in, I see people, you know, putting those little chains on kids. You seen those, the ropes on kids and they walk with them? Yeah, I don't really like that. But at least
Leash on the kid, like a dog, like a dog.
It came about. But here's the difference. If you're in a park with a kid, you know, let the kid run and play. But now if you're out in a busy road, street, you know, you might need that chain on that kid. Why? Because their life is in danger. Right? Because you need to keep some things from happening.
I get it though, that's why this is called the Old Testament and the New Testament.
Yeah, Old Testament and New Testament is a development. And so there's a lot of things that happen that were necessary while they were developing and going through the wilderness that they had to have people locked, chained, and in step with due to the harshness of it. But that doesn't mean it applied to them later. Remember, they were also nomadic people. Nomadic people mean when the Leviticus laws was written, a lot of them were nomadic. I mean, they traveled from place to place, searching for a home, searching for food, you know, searching for a place to live. So you're going to have one set of laws when you're nomadic and another set of laws when you're living in one place and playing gardens. You know, if we are hunters and we out here hunting, it's a whole different set of rules we're going to have. You know, time is going to be different. You know, what time we get up is going to be different. When we go to work is going to be different. Because we're going to be following what the animals do and not necessarily sticking to a certain plan. But now if you are if you're a farmer and we're planting in one area, then our rules are going to be totally different of how we engage with each other and what we do, what time we get up, what time we work. Okay? Same thing with Christ. You can't put one set of rules and say that's supposed to apply throughout all time. Okay? So Jesus comes along. Let's just get through this because we got to go through our papers in a second. What verse we at? 28. Therefore, the Son of Man, remember this, the Sabbath was not made for man, but man for the Sabbath. The Sabbath was not made for man. The Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath. Okay? I'm not a slave to the Sabbath. Okay? I wasn't made for the Sabbath. Okay? It was made for me. Therefore, the Son of Man is Lord also of the Sabbath. That means that he's Lord of the Sabbath. Okay? And he's not a slave to it. Okay? Chapter 3. Who can start reading that for me? Anybody? Okay, if you read the first two verses for me.
Chapter 3.
Uh-huh.
Again he entered the synagogue, and a man was there who had a withered hand. They watched him to see whether he would cure him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him.
Okay, stop there. See, once again, here we are. Because he did something on the Sabbath day, they're only looking to see how he breaks the rules. Because they don't understand who he is. They don't understand what he's doing. So they want to just accuse him of stuff. Okay? Sherry, you can read for me now.
Where we at again?
Verse
3. And he said unto the man which had the withered hand, Stand forth. And he said unto them, Is it lawful to do good on the Sabbath days or to do evil, to save life or to kill? But they held their peace. And when he had looked around about on them with anger, being grieved for the hardness of their hearts, he said unto the man, Stretch forth thy hand. And he stretched it out. And his hand was restored whole as the other. And the Pharisees went forth and straightway took counsel with the Herodians against him, how they might destroy him. But Jesus withdrew himself and his disciples to the sea. And a great multitude from Galilee followed him, and from Judea, and from Jerusalem, and from Idumea, and from beyond Jordan. And they about Tyre, and Sidon, a great multitude, when they had heard what great things he did, came unto him. And he spake.
Okay, now notice here. Notice here is another example of Jesus. They basically want to challenge him. and said, this is the Sabbath day. You're not supposed to heal the Sabbath day. You're not supposed to do any work. And Jesus said within himself, is it good to do evil or good? Once again, Jesus is calling you to use what kind of skills? Discernment. Analytical skills. Process. Don't just follow rules, but is it good? And that can apply to a whole lot of stuff. That we might have rules and say you can't do this, you can't do that, or this is right or this is wrong. Jesus said, okay, analyze it, discern it. Is it okay to do something good on the Sabbath day? Even if it is breaking some law that you have. Even if it doesn't follow certain traditions. But it's a good thing. Or is it bad? And so Jesus demonstrates that to say, he healed the man, and it made all of them mad. So much so that he had to leave.
But that had to happen.
That had to happen? Okay, it had to happen.
Yeah, well, I said for the scripture to be able to reveal itself the way it's supposed to, the Lord had to harden their hearts towards him to prepare them to be hung on the cross.
Okay. Their hearts had to be hardened. He had to demonstrate the power of God, and he did it through their religious beliefs, not through just like some evil force that's out there against him, even though Satan was. But most of his problems in Mark had to deal with people. It had to deal with people who were religious and didn't like him, and didn't like what he was doing. Okay, how he was like shaking things up. And they didn't understand who he was. Okay? We look with Sheriff Norman.
And in verse 9, and he spake to his disciples that a small ship should wait on him because of the multitude, lest they should drown him. And for he had healed many, insomuch that they pressed upon him for to touch him, as many as had plagues. And unclean spirits, when they saw him, fell down before him and cried, saying, Thou art the Son of God. And he straitly charged them that they should not make him known.
And notice once again, unclean spirits recognized him. But he said, do not make it known. Okay? That's another part of that secrecy part. Go ahead.
And he goeth up into a mountain and calleth unto him whom he would. And they came unto him, and he ordained 12, that they should be with him, and that they might send them forth to preach. And he had power to heal sicknesses and to cast out devils. And Simon he surnamed Peter, and James the son of Zebedee, and John the brother of James, and he surnamed them what? Which is the sons of thunder. And Andrew and Philip and Bartholomew and Matthew and Thomas and James the son of Alphaeus and Thaddeus and Simon the Canaanite and Judas Iscariot, which all betrayed him. And they went into an house, and the multitude coming together again, so that they could not so much as eat bread. And when his friends heard of it, they went out to lay hold on him, for they said, He is beside himself.
Okay, stop right there. Okay. Now, notice what it said. That he was doing miraculous things. He was healing the sick. He called his disciples. Also, they pointed out Judas, the one who betrayed him. They wanted to make sure that was known. We can get into that another time. It's a whole other discussion. But they went out to lay hold on him, his friends. What does that mean? The people who were close to him, family and friends, went out to do what? No, not to do him harm, but to go get him. Because they said he was what? Said it was crazy. I mean, it is what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's in the gospel. I mean, don't be scared to say it. I mean, they said go get him because he's beside himself. I mean, that was just an old way of saying he's crazy. Okay? He's outside of his mind. Okay? He's beside himself. How can somebody be beside himself? You know what I'm saying? So that's what they were saying about him, that he's crazy. Who was that?
Verse 22.
Verse 22. Okay. Go ahead and read for me some more.
And the scribes which came down from Jerusalem said, He had Beelzebub, and by the prince of the devils casteth he out devils. And he called unto them and said unto them in parables, how can Satan cast out Satan? And if a kingdom be divided against itself, that kingdom cannot stand. And if a house be divided against itself, that house cannot stand. And if Satan rise up against himself and be divided, he cannot stand, but have an end. No man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. Verily I say unto you, all sins shall be forgiven unto the sons of men, and blasphemies wherewithsoever they shall blaspheme. But he that shall blaspheme against the Holy Ghost have never forgiveness, but is in danger of eternal damnation, because they said he'd have an unclean spirit.
Okay, now read a little further.
There came then his brother and his mother, and standing without, sent unto him, calling him. And the multitude sat about him, and they said unto him, Behold, thy mother and thy brethren without seek for thee. And he answered them, saying, Who is my mother, or who my brethren? And he looked round about on them which sat about him, and said, Behold, my mother and my brethren. For whosoever shall do the will of God, the same is my brother and my sister and my mother.
Okay, so here we have a text in which Jesus is clearly speaking in parables and, revealing once again, being able to use discernment in what you do. How can Satan, work against Satan? The first thing we'll do is call him Beelzebub because he wasn't following the rules. But he's saying, but if I'm doing good, that contradicts the idea of being satanic. So sometimes you have to measure things and not necessarily strictly follow rules. And that's what he's asking them to do, inviting them into a whole different way of looking at righteousness. Not based upon, what the Pharisees say you can and can't do, but look upon it in terms of what's right. What's justice. What's love. How can you be satanic if you're doing something good for people? How can you be healing people and giving them back their lives at the same time working for Satan? Okay, because Satan only does what Satan does, and evil is evil. But you can't take something good and make it evil. And then he said that sin shall be forgiven. Okay, but blasphemy, because the whole New Testament, there's an issue with what blasphemy means. And it seems to change as time goes on. But in this early Gospel of Mark, blasphemy against the Holy Ghost simply meant identifying something that is meant to be good and calling it evil. That you cannot be forgiven for. That if Christ is, doing the will of God, and you identify that as being demonic, taking that which is holy and that which is good and making it evil for your own purpose, is blasphemy against the Holy Spirit. Mm-hmm. That you've taken that which is of God and you now made it evil and called it Beelzebub. Because that confuses everybody on what righteousness is. It pushes people back into following rules opposed to discerning the Spirit of God. And when you no longer discern the Spirit of God, how can you be forgiven? It's not possible. So blasphemy now is basically taking the Holy Spirit of God and making it evil. And the works of God and calling it evil. In very simple terms, that's it. Losing control, that's it. That's what it is. It's all about legislating the power of God from the office, opposed to from the Spirit of God in the hearts of people, and demonstrating God's work through your actions. And when people see that, they call it evil. That's what shall not be forgiven. Okay? Now that's Mark. Now, once we get beyond Mark, the other testaments will have a different perspective on what blasphemy is. Matter of fact, it becomes so unclear that we don't even know about it by the time of the epistle writers, because the understanding of blasphemy begins to change. Okay? Because right now, how can everybody's a victim of blasphemy? Because nobody really knows who Christ is. It's only after crucifixion that blasphemy could be real anyway. Because it was after crucifixion that we understand him to be the Son of God. Prior to that, they didn't know. They still didn't know. Even his disciples didn't know who he was. His friends thought he was just beside himself. So nobody really understood him. And we see that it's a development. The first 4 chapters of Mark is a whole development of Christ showing who he is and people not really knowing. And him saying, it ain't time. It ain't time for me to know. And they don't know until he dies. And the centurion said, this is the Son of God. Okay? So, you got a paper in front of you. This is going to be your homework. Okay? Homework. Y'all in school. Y'all in Bible study. Okay? Now, some of you have to read a little further. You know, you have to read chapter 4. And if you don't get it, don't worry about it. Still come back. You know, I got students who, they don't do their homework, they don't want to come to school the next day. You know what I'm saying? I mean, like they sick. You know what I'm saying? But here's the thing, if you don't do it, still come. Still come. It doesn't matter. And we'll go over it and give you another paper. Even if you lose it, we have another one for you. Okay? The question is, what does Jesus often tell people or spirits not to do after he performs a miracle or is recognized? Don't answer. I want you to go back and do it at home. Why do you think Mark includes these commandments for silence? Think about misunderstanding, public expectations. We talked about that. Mark 3:11. Even demons know who Jesus is. Why might Jesus not want this kind of testimony about his identity? Why might not he want it? Think about it. How does secrecy contrast with the openness of Jesus' later mission? Later on, Jesus he wanted everybody to know who he was. But why is it important in this moment, that they don't? Okay? Jesus says in parables, now this is in chapter 4, we haven't got to that yet. So, matter of fact, if you just do 1 through 5, questions 1 through 4 would be good. And chapter 4 we haven't read yet, but now if you want to go ahead and answer those, then you can. Or just want to skip the ones that's in chapter 4, and then you can go on to 3. Why do you think Mark includes these commandments for silence? No, I'm sorry. On the back. On the back. If Jesus wanted to keep his identity hidden at first, what might they say about this kind of Messiah, who he is? Okay, the last one, your own words, summarize what you think Mark wants his readers to learn through the motif of secrecy. Okay, what do you think you want to learn? So, the only one you may not be able to answer is number 5 and number 6. But if you read ahead and you want to answer them, go ahead. Okay? If you want to answer those, go ahead. And if you want to call each other up, y'all call each other up and discuss it. If there's somebody you want to call and talk to about it. Yeah, y'all call and talk about it, and y'all come up with what you think and have some discussion.
Text me the answer.
Or somebody text you the answer.
Corey, the smart one. Text me the answer.
Hey, put him on the spot.
Put your own answer down.
It's fun.
Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. Yeah, so don't worry about it. If you lose it, you don't have it next week, don't worry about it. Just come anyway, and we're going to discuss it and go over anyway and have the other copy for you. Okay?
So this pays for all
That's for all the chapters, 2 and 3. 2 and 3, and also 4. It's 2, 3, and 4. But we didn't get a chance to read 4 tonight. I anticipate us reading that, but if not, we'll come back next week, and we're going to do 4, 5, and hopefully 6. We're going to move into Jesus ending his secrecy motif and start to go more into his openness in ministry, okay? And see where that takes us. Okay, so hopefully tonight we've learned a little more about Christ, about his intent, his purpose, and their understanding of who he was. And I want us to eventually be able to contrast that with Matthew and Luke, in the beginning, of how he seemed totally different in this book. And it will help us when we think about Jesus to look at him through the lenses of all of the Gospels, which will give us a deeper understanding of who he is. Because this can also bring light to Luke and Matthew. Okay? All right. So next Wednesday, 5 o'clock, we'll be here. Okay?
Matthew is the beginning of the New Testament. That's how.
It's the beginning in terms of in the book.